British monarch continues to be the formal head of state until a republic is proclaimed. So in our context, one of the things that people often point out is that between 1952 and the proclamation of Pakistan as a republic in 1956, Queen Elizabeth was technically the head of state, that is to say the ultimate head of state of Pakistan, and we had a Governor General who was technically her agent. But of course, this was just a sort of a legal fiction or a diplomatic fiction, if for all practical purposes power had been transferred in 1947. The abolition of the British monarchy is of course a very interesting constitutional and legal question. In Britain, if Parliament chooses to abolish the monarchy, it will have to convene some sort of a constituent assembly. And that constituent assembly will then have to draw up a new formal constitution with a formal position of head of state, maybe a president or maybe something like that, who will then be appointed through a due process of law. So that would be one way that Parliament decides that enough is enough, we've had enough of the British monarchy, the House of Windsor needs to go, and they decide that okay, let's convene this assembly and let us have a special session of Parliament to draft a new constitution. Another way, of course, that the monarchy can come to an end is in the event of large-scale civil unrest or a sort of political revolution in that sense, in which the existing form of government is overthrown and a new group of people seize power and proclaim the United Kingdom, as it is now called, to be some sort of a united republic or a new kind of a state. Of course, another possibility is that the monarch simply abdicates and nobody else is willing to accept the crown. That is also a possibility that can lead to the end of the monarchy, because simply put, the post falls vacant and nobody is willing to take it up. That would of course create a very interesting constitutional vacuum, because the monarch is responsible for officially approving all the decisions of the Parliament, all the decisions of the government. If there is an economic impact, it would probably be positive, because the enormous property and wealth and resources that are held by the House of Windsor could then be redistributed. I don't think it will make much difference to tourism in the United Kingdom. One argument that is often made in defense of the British monarchy is that royal properties bring in something like 2 to 3 billion pounds a year in tourism. But the fact is that those palaces and those estates would still get tourists even if there wasn't a monarchy. So if you look at, let's say, South Asia, people haven't stopped visiting the Taj Mahal because the Mughals are no longer in power. It is still a huge draw for the tourism industry. So I don't think that that argument actually holds much water. But I do think that the British monarchy is far too integrated into the ideology of the British state, into the way in which the British state seeks to legitimize itself both at home and abroad, for it to be very easily dispensed with. Well, the royal family owns a lot of property. They are also entitled to a direct transfer from the central government. Between the two of these things, there is a lot of debate about how much money they get and how much property they own. So, by conservative estimates, their total property holdings are estimated at between 25 and 30 billion US dollars. There are other more expansive estimates that have it at more than 70 billion UK pounds. When you talk about the royal household budget, The direct transfer that they are supposed to get from the government is in the range of about 100 million pounds. Their critics, however, point out that actually a lot of the expenditure is borne by the local governments and local authorities. So when there is an actual royal function or a royal event, what happens is that much of the expenditure has to take place and it is not actually accounted for in the budget of the royal household, a kind of situation where the monarchy lives off the land. So essentially, the House of Windsor, of which of course the Queen or the King are the most important part, owns a great deal of property and also receives a direct subsidy paid for by the British taxpayer. These are their two main sources of income, though as I indicated just now, there is a considerable ambiguity about how much expense do they actually incur. The Commonwealth was founded in 1931 and it now has more than 50 members. Of those members, there is a distinction between those Commonwealth countries that do not recognize the British sovereign as their own sovereign and are normally republics, and those Commonwealth countries, there are maybe about 14, 15 of them left, which continue to recognize the Queen or the King of England as their sovereign. So those countries that continue to recognize the King or Queen of England as their sovereign are referred to as Commonwealth realm. So in that sense, any realm can become a republic at any time that it chooses. That is something which its own elected representatives or governments can decide. At the same time, any member of the Commonwealth, whether they are a realm or whether they are a regular member, can choose to exit the Commonwealth whenever they feel like, and a few countries have gone out and back into the Commonwealth. So there is no restriction in terms of what a particular government can do with regard to the formal status of the King or the Queen of England. So that is in our own part of the world. It comes to an end when we proclaim ourselves a republic.
Thank you for watching the full video. आप में से बहुत से ऐसे लोग हैं जिन्होंने शायद हमारा YouTube channel subscribe नहीं किया. So if you want to support independent journalism and watch more meaningful content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.